Hello, everybody. It's an event for Aboriginal women. Let me speak. Stop racism. This forum is for Aboriginal women to talk about social justice issues for reconciliation. Aboriginal women don't have a voice in policy or legislation on a national level. Under the Indian Act, Aboriginal women are ignored, they're voiceless, causing poverty because women are not recognized for economy, they're not recognized as the head of a household, the culture is not recognized. They are the heads of families in Coast Salish territory. Therefore, the justice system has barriers that eliminate them from having any type of social justice in Canada. So this forum is for Aboriginal women to speak the truth. There's no written dialogue. They're talking from the heart. And this rattler was made for me. I come from a Longhouse family. I come from Swistas Wolseam family that's been in this territory for over 10,000 years, the names come from the women's side of the family. It's matriarchal, not patriarchal. And the social protocols that women follow are really different from Canadian society. There are differences that are oceans apart. And those differences are noticeable. Women are usually quiet, observant. Women are not allowed to be alone with a man. The protocols are very strict. We have respect for the elderly Aboriginal women in a room. They can do what they want. They can sit where they please. The people usually dote over them because out of respect. The children, too, are given a lot of room. They're cared for by the whole family, the whole community, and the whole nation. So we have some child and family issues that are not recognized under social services. So what we're experiencing today in Canada is legislative poverty. Well, we don't have the usual elder here, so I'm going to say a prayer for all the people here. Creator, I ask you today to bless all the people in this room. I ask for spiritual strength from the north, east, south, and west. Give spiritual strength, safety, and security for all the people in this room. We've had a long journey to come to reconciliation and justice. Aboriginal women want reconciliation from Canada to be acknowledged and recognized. This rattler was made in Coast Salish territory from a Native woman. We use a rattler here, not a feather, when we speak. And I will ask the Creator to give strength to all the women and bless the walk of every single woman and man in this room. I'll pass the rattler on to Kathy Goldsmith so she may talk. A talking stick is used for each person to speak the truth right from their heart. And that's what this is today, a talking circle.
Just like to say welcome to everyone that's here today. It's a blessing to be here today. I was very honored when Sharon came to my workplace and asked me to be here today. I kind of hesitated for a while because I was at work, and then the memory came back to me of our elders. Our elders always taught us never to say no. So that was why I came here today. And I'm really happy and honored to be here. And I'd also like to send all my blessing to all of the women. And I also would like to say prayers for all the women out there who need the prayers, all the children. I never really got too much information, but I'm really, really glad to be here today. I'm honored. I come from the Cowichan Valley, had a short life with my parents. I only had 10 years with my mom. They passed away. My dad passed away when I was only 11 years old. My older brother kept us together. I never will forget my older brother. He kept the family together. And he passed away also. But I'm the second youngest of 4 brothers and 4 sisters, but I lost one brother. I don't have too much to say, but I'm honored to be here, Sharon. I need. Bless everyone that's in here today. And I want to say Haichka to everyone that's here today. Haichka. I will pass the rattler to Lorraine.
I've never used one, so this is a little bit strange, but I want to say I'm really honored to be here. I'm flattered that I was included. As you can see, I am not Inuit. I come to represent the Inuit mothers and children, and I am here as a witness of what I saw when I was up north, when I worked for the Inuit. I was working as a youth protection agent, and I saw many situations where women were backed against walls that were it seemed like there was a lot of powerlessness, a lot of ways in which justice was not doing them justice. So, because of that, I came to the idea that I needed to do something about it. It's enough to, you can witness it and not do anything. A lot of people sit in their seats and wait for others to do it. But when I looked inside of myself, I thought, no, we can't do this. We can't do this to the children, but we cannot do this to the mothers either. In the North, as maybe not here. Here we talk, as a white, we talk about feminism. Up there, you don't talk about feminism, you talk about motherhood. That's what life is about. And the women suffer a lot when you take their children away through their fault or through others' fault. They suffer so much from having their children taken. So my plan is to walk 8,000 kilometers across Canada to talk about some of the injustices that are done to the mothers and some of, actually it's communities, it's not just the mothers when you come down to it, and to have safe houses built in the communities so that the children can stay in their communities. Right now, children are taken, a child that's from, let's say, up above the tree line in Quebec might be sent to Vancouver. How is he going to see his mother or his family or his community? How's he going to be in touch with his culture? So this is what I want to be. I want to be part of the solution. It'll be the people's solution. It's not my solution, it's the people's solution. But we need to have a lot of support to put that into action. We need to do a lot of education so that everybody gets involved in a project like that. So I'm walking 8,000 kilometers. I'm walking straight in front of me. I occasionally detour to do conferences, like I got a little bit stuck in Duncan because I saw a poster and I hesitated. I thought, well, I'm not Indigenous, so why would I go there? And then I thought, well, if you don't ask, you'll never know. So I phoned Sharon, and that's how I got to be here. And I would like to talk to as many people as I can. Going east towards Ingonish, Nova Scotia is where I plan to stop. So right now, as of today, I'm missing 3 kilometers on my feet to do the first 1,000 kilometer, but it has been a grand adventure. I meet interesting people, I meet people who want to do something, I meet people who share the same view as I do, as you do, about taking care of children, because they're the next generation. They're the people that are going to be governing us. They're the people that need to be strong now. You know, I'm a has-been. They're in front of me. Yeah. So this is my last before has-been step. And I think this is kind of like a life's work. You know, I was a social worker before, and I always thought that the work that we do should change us. Well, the work that I went and did there changed me. So I want to thank you for welcoming me here and making room for this white woman to be with you. And I don't feel that, you know, ordinarily it's like we're all in the same boat together, and we need to work to be together. And I think this is what it's about. And thank you, Sharon, for letting me participate so that I can be in your boat. Yeah, in our boat.
Thank you, Lorraine. Kelly.
I was just at the right height before. First of all, I want to say thank you, Sharon, for having me here. I'm not really sure. I don't have a speech prepared, or I really. I'm just going to speak from my heart, and I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Constable Allen. I'm a member of the RCMP. I've been with the RCMP for 20 years. 16 of that I've been in First Nations policing. I've been in the Cowichan Valley for 8 years, and previous to that I was on the Sunshine Coast, also in First Nations policing, and then previous to that I was on a little island in the Pacific called Flores Island, community of Howsett, for 2 years. But before the RCMP, before all of that, I'm Shuswap, Secwepemc, Interior Salish. My mom is Catherine Allen, and this is how we learned how to introduce ourselves, is we say who our parents are, and then that way people who know our parents will know us through our parents. So my mom was Catherine Allen, and her dad, my grandfather, William Allen, and my great aunt is fairly well known in the province of BC and elsewhere. I grew up in foster homes. My great aunt, Mary Thomas, has an honorary doctorate with the University of British Columbia. And she passed some years ago. And, you know, I was very honored to know her. And I could never understand why, when I met her, just about every time I met her, she would cry. She would hold my hand and she would cry. And a similar result with my mom. The few times I met her, my mom would cry. And I never understood that. And I was always puzzled by it. And I always thought, why? Why is my mom crying? Why is Grandma Mary crying? And I think I've come to understand it a little bit, in that I think there was there was extreme happiness mixed with profound sadness. And it goes right back to I think residential school and you know, before that. But I think residential school played a big part, and it's not lost on me that standing here in this uniform, we, the RCMP, were seen as the frontline agents for residential school. We're the ones that came into the communities. So I have an understanding, I have a unique understanding of my role as a policeman, and also of the grief that the sight of this uniform, the fear that the sight of this uniform causes, you know, for some people, for many people in our communities. And that helps me to I think, to do my job more effectively as a policeman and as a person. You know, gives me a better understanding of the fear that this uniform garners. But getting back to my beginnings, I grew up in foster homes. I was too young to actually remember my mom when we were taken out of our home and out of our community. I was 2, and I never really reconnected with our community until I was an adult. And again, this is where I say, when I would meet people in my community, you know, some would just hold my hand and cry, and it took me a long time to figure that out, to understand that. I think as a policeman and as a person, I've also learned to understand a lot of the circumstances that our people have dealt with over the years, and it gives me a broader understanding I think it makes how I do my job, I think it makes that a little bit more relevant when dealing with people, and particularly dealing with women of our communities. Because that's a huge part of what I do. And I'm sometimes called upon to be the person that goes in and assesses whether or not we need to have some sort of short-term intervention. And one of the things that sort of that hardens me and is easier, in my estimation anyways, is the fact that we have social services in our communities now. We have our own social service departments in the communities I police, as opposed to calling outside agencies where the result was removing the children from the community. Now we place the children elsewhere in the community, and I think that's a tremendous step forward for us as a people, and to help preserve our culture is not removing our children from our communities. It goes to child protection. It goes to child protection, and eventually it comes around to community protection. If we can preserve our culture and keep our children in our community and with their families, with our families, I think our communities will grow stronger. And our women in our communities, I wouldn't be here without them. So my hand's up to all women of our communities. Anyways, I'm probably starting to ramble on here, so I'm gonna pass off the talking stick. But thank you for listening. And I learned in my community, as an adult, when we're done talking, we say, all my relations. So, and that speaks to everybody that I'm related to. I'm recognizing everybody by saying all my relations. So, all my relations.
Hello, my name is Glenn Schmidt. I'm a local artist from Victoria, but I got to know Sharon a few years ago in Duncan and became good friends with Sharon. And just a little bit about my art. I'm a believer, and so some of my art is on a biblical theme. And one of my paintings in the hallway is called The Good Samaritan. And it's a story it's actually a parable by Jesus. And it's talking about a guy, and in this case, in the painting, I've made it a Native woman, First Nations woman, and she's been picked up out of a ditch, not by the respectable people or the higher up people, but by a Samaritan who was an outcast. And I think that Samaritan represents all of us, and the fact that there should be more attention on the people that are suffering, especially the Native women that are suffering because of suicide and the terrible tragedies on the Highway of Tears also. And I actually had an art show called the Highway of Tears years ago. I got political signs and I painted the names of all the murdered or missing women on the signs, and I put them along the Pat Day Highway down in Victoria. And it got shut down because somebody misinterpreted. They thought it said Highway to Hell, and instead it said Highway to Tears. So the police came and shut down my art show. They made me take down all the signs. I had them, they were like political signs all stuck in the boulevard on the side of the road. But it did raise some awareness, I think. Unfortunately, not many people got to see it. But when I lived in Duncan, though, I went to school at the Cowichan Adult Learning, And I met Sharon's cousin, Monica, and that's another experience I've had because she was always friendly to me and a very friendly person, and I always got along with her, and I helped her with some of her English, how to write some of the stories that we were basing our essays on. But the sad thing is, I learned from Sharon a few years later that they found her in Victoria, and she'd been beaten to death or something. And so it's close to my heart because I've had my own experience with some of the people that you're all dear to, and. But I also went on the reserve down in Victoria years ago, and on the Sartla Preserve, and I met a fellow named Charlie, and he'd been mistreated on one of the residential schools down in one of the islands down there. I think it used to be called Cooper Island, and boy, he told me some horror stories. And I just want to say that that's, whatever religion that was, I think we all have a good idea that, that's not the truth, and that's not biblical. Jesus said, I've come that I might give you life and have it more abundantly in John 10. And that's what the gospel's all about, is life, eternal life. And so all this persecution that went on, I believe that's a counterfeit. That's a counterfeit. That's not true. That's not the true faith. And anyway, yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and I hope you enjoy my art. 3 of the pieces are biblical. There's one on Moses raising the serpent in the wilderness, which represents Christ. He said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all people to me." And then the other one is Moses and the throwing down his rod, it turns into a serpent and eats up the sorcerer's serpents. And then the other one is the Good Samaritan. And then I have other pieces there too that are not necessarily biblical, but just I try to take from Norval Morisseau. He was an Ojibwe. He's known as the Picasso of the woods, and also Jean-Michel Basquiat. I don't have much of that style here today, though. And some of my other influences are Picasso and so forth, Jackson Pollock and others. But anyway, I'm just happy to be here, and thank you, Sharon. And I really appreciate being part of this.
We're seeking action for reconciliation and social justice for Aboriginal women in Canada, especially in Cowichan. Here's the Rattler, made Coast Salish Territory, gifted to me. So we're going this way, and then it goes to the next line, and it goes to freedom.
Well, from my perspective, I am a, fourth generation residential school survivor. My great-grandfather went to the residential school in the 1800s. My family of origin is Sahilton. Chief Sahilton, he received his name Modeste through, or it was his son, Tsiitmut, who received the name Modeste from the first bishop who came to Cowichan. And our family were Catholic. And my great-grandfather went to the residential school. We share the same great-grandfather, Sharon and I, Schwalzilam. And there was a lot of anguish that came down through our family from the residential school, all of the incidents that happened. they weren't just incidents, they were atrocities from what I heard. And it took me a long time to understand what my dad talked about because he went to the residential school. And I couldn't understand it when I was growing up. He kept talking about the residential school. He hated the food. He hated the way he was treated. He hated that he couldn't learn because he had experienced so much trauma. He said they made him work, they made him farm, but he learned how to bake. There were some good things that happened. And there was the Catholicism that he learned. But what hurt me was he said that the culture was backwards. He said it wasn't good, it wasn't beneficial to us, and from what I understood, a lot of people were punished for speaking the language. And so I know we're not supposed to talk about the residential school anymore, but the intergenerational trauma is just, it's not over by putting money into our bank accounts. The trauma has to be worked through, and through our families, and it's come down to me through myself, and it comes to me through alcohol abuse, comes down through violence. My great-grandfather was told that he was like a monkey because by the priests and the nuns, that he was robbed of his dignity, he was robbed of his childhood. My grandparents were robbed of their childhood. And as you know, growing up, some of us weren't allowed to have a child's life. And so I think it's still affecting my life. It's affected my son's life especially. And the worst part is the alcoholism. It's like a cancer that grows in the heart and in the brain and in our genetic memories. Because, you know, I used to have dreams about being on this island, and I had to get off this island, and I dreamt that every time I get 10 feet away from the ferry would be leaving, and I'd be carrying these suitcases of luggage. And I couldn't get on the ferry because I was always chasing my luggage. So for me, the issues are, you know, painful trauma that gets handed down to the children. And children are hurting, and some children young people grow up and they don't even know what it is they're hurting about because there's so much emptiness in their lives. And the older generations don't talk about it. There's just disconnectedness between the generations. And we're criticized for it. As First Nations people, we're criticized. You know, we're told we're dummies, and I see First Nations people walking on the road, and the vehicles, the traffic are going, "Get off the road, you dirty Indian, you lazy, slow Indian," you know. Those things are hurtful just for me to see and hear, and to see children walking on the road knowing that they're hungry. And I see families walking, and that parents are so skinny, and they live on $280 a month, you know, per person. And years ago, when Trudeau was the Prime Minister, I watched an interview, and he talked about how he went to China. He went to China, and he said, he looked at the population, and they were impressive with their discipline and their army. And he came back to Canada, and he started the child tax benefit. And so people started having babies left and right, left and right. We want to have lots of children so we can have lots of child tax benefit. come Child Tax Benefit Day nowadays, you see the young parents partying and trying to overcome their pain and their trauma by drinking and alcohol. And now the children are being taken away and put into foster care. And they go into foster care, and then they age out of foster care and they grow up with no roots. And then they grow and they have children and they don't know how to parent because they've never been connected to their parents. So my heart really aches for our people. It just makes me so sad to see young parents. They're so, hopeless, and that's all we've got to live for is to be parents and keep our children alive. And there's that emptiness that, they've been cut off from the religions. They've been, by the people who call themselves priests and nuns. And that's like murder of the spirit to me. And it's our spirit that keeps us alive. And so there's so much distrust now for the people who bring the religion. And the lands that are being taken away, it's really affecting all of our lives really in a deep way. So for me, it's got to come to an end, and there's an answer somewhere. I know there's an answer. I'm not going to say it's hopeless, but I know there's an answer somewhere, and it's an easy answer. And I believe in God, and the Bible says we need to love each other, and it's not just because of God's authority. I think love has a function. If you look at the wars in the world, it's because there's no love there. You look at abortion, there's no love. You look at broken families, where's the love? There's no love. The Bible says to love each other, and people have strange ideas of what love is about. So I think that, we need to return to our religion and listen to what is said, what the true evangelists have to say. So I think the kids in foster care need their religion, and they shouldn't be separated from their religion. They shouldn't be separated from their roots, from their culture. Our culture has a function, and that function says that we stand on our own and respect each other. Our culture says that we have a protocol, we have a formal way of talking to each other and respecting each other. And it says that we're obligated to love each other because we all have historically a healthy dependence and respect for each other. So I think that this artificial way of living is more harmful than it is helpful. So I think for me it's just the intergenerational trauma is the biggest issue that I have in my life, because that's about all I have to say, and I think that people need to stand up to their legal obligations, because there is a connection between the law and our spirituality, and I think that needs to be connected. And I think that could be done by us standing together, all of us First Nations people, saying we have a right to our spirituality, we have a right to our morality, and we should not be judged by our past. by the past traumas of our families. And that's a big issue for me, is that the foster care families, the foster care system is not letting our families let go of the past, even though they need to heal from the past. So I'm not saying all foster care families are bad. There are a lot of loving people out there, but there are some that are just taking advantage of the system for the money. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your answer.
I was gonna let my mom go first.
It has to. Angelina?
So basically I'm from the Oneida Nation. My mother is from Oneida, Diana Day, and my aunt Linda Day here. Basically, I've grown up in Vancouver most of my life. I'm a young woman, and was taught from my mother the traditional Oneida ways, and basically she made me a strong woman and taught me all she could. Especially in secondary school, I needed a lot of guidance from her because I didn't get to learn about my own culture in high school, and basically I had to learn that in college. But the more I learned about the government and the Indian Act and everything like that, and just was kind of sad that I had to learn in college because a lot of the Aboriginal youth aren't graduating at high enough rates and basically aren't learning about their culture and basically how everything came to be and the different issues today. So basically I think it's important to have those teachings in high school and at a younger age and starting building up to learn about that. Not just for the Aboriginal kids, but for kids all over, because everyone, I think, needs to know more about the history, the Canadian history, and what happened to our people. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all your stories and informing me about stuff I didn't know. Thank you. Oh, also, there's a campaign called Fostering the Change, and it's basically about foster kids in care aging out at 19, and they are struggling. 55% of them are Aboriginal ancestry, have Aboriginal ancestry, and they're struggling because a lot of them aren't graduating. 2/3 of them by the age of 19 aren't graduated, and 65% of them have mental health issues, and it's just a whole bunch of different issues, and they get tossed around in the system, and it's not very good. So basically, we have this petition you can sign, fosteringchange.ca, and that will help us raise the aging out age to 25 years of age instead of 19, and that would help the kids, foster kids, a lot, so they do not end up homeless and in worse cases. So, thank you.
My name is Linda Day, and I'm from the Oneida Nation, which is part of the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy. And our grandparents named me after my grandmother. My father's mother, her name is Gunnet Daha, and it means she carries the village. She carries the village is my own name, and I love my own name. I used to wonder when, I was really close to my grandparents, they were my great-grandparents on the reserve, and I used to wonder how come they never taught, my parents never taught us how to speak Oneida. And it was our Grandma Day. She did speak very good English, communicated with us really well, but her English wasn't the best. But she didn't want us to learn because she said, you're not going to need that where you're going in the white world. And I was heartbroken about that because I wanted to learn Oneida, but the older I got, the harder it was going to become to learn it. And then I moved, and I've never lost my connection now, even though I don't know all of our language, I do know some of it. So I'm happy to have that part. But it's really important to hang on to what we have. My father didn't go to residential school, but my mother did. And hearing the other speakers talk about hearts breaking when you learn that your parents or your grandparents went to residential school, it just breaks my heart too. And my mother did her best, but we're lucky that our mother didn't lose her parenting skills, because a lot of our people did when they went to residential schools. But we were blessed that our mother had a very good relationship with her grandmother. And she taught her love, and I think that's where it comes from for us. If you have that loving touch, and if you know how to love when you're a child, give and receive love, that's transferred on. And so we were lucky that she didn't completely lose her parenting. She did her best. She was a good parent. And as the years went on, I went back home quite a bit, and I noticed, well, our father died when he was only 44, but I noticed that a lot of his friends that would have been his age were really older than what in the other world were, like in the white world. They were aging much faster, and there was lots of amputations and a lot of health issues, and I used to wonder how come our health isn't that good compared to the rest of the people. And so I did go back to school, and I did learn about healthy aging, and I did some research on residential schools. Like, even though we lived the experience of the residential schools and we knew the stories, when I did my master's in gerontology from Simon Fraser, I studied the relationship between residential school attendance and health status in later life. And I'm telling you, some of the research that I read and some of the documentation of what our people went through, I cried. I think I even cried at my defense when I had to defend my thesis. It was just so emotional, just so raw. So anyway, I did that, and I've always worked in health. I've always tried to work with our people. And right now I work at the Aboriginal Mother Center Society in Vancouver. And we're an organization that we have 16 units of housing for women who are either homeless or at risk of losing their homes, risk of homelessness. And they have young children, 9 and under, and they can come and live at our facility for up to 18 months while we help them get their feet on the ground, help them with their healing path, help them with programs or whatever it is they need assistance with, and to help them get their children back if their children are in care. So they average on stay about 12 months, but they can stay for up to 18 months. And then we also have a daycare for children aged 3 to 5. We have a 25-seat licensed daycare. And it's right in East Vancouver. And we have a commercial kitchen. We have a community kitchen that feeds everybody too. So it's a very beautiful facility. If you're ever in Vancouver, you're welcome to come and visit us. And this topic is really important, and I'm glad that Sharon put it on. I just think that we all need to check our own, what we know to be true. And sometimes you might have the best intentions, but it's how you speak to people. And you're mentioning about telling people what to do and where to sit and that. I had that experience, and it's not very nice. I felt like I was just minding my own business, which I was, but I have to speak up. So if we could all just check our own, the need to tell people what to do often is something that our people have felt, is that people are always trying to tell us what to do in one form or another. Mm-hmm. And, it's just do this, do that, move, do this. And it's just like, just give us some room to breathe and maybe take a day off from telling us what to do all the time. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Sharon. I appreciate it. And for all your hard work. all my relations.
I'm going to stand, and, because I have a really small voice sometimes, and so I know that when I stand, my voice I can get bigger and louder, and I really want to thank you for sharing your voice this morning. So I just want to say thank you, Sharon. I really, really, truly appreciate and honor your heart. It's so big, so very big, and your wisdom. It's amazing. And I was so impressed when you moved back home and want to see some changes happen. And I know we've been in touch, and when you had asked me to come, if I would come and speak about racism and whatever I wanted to talk about as an Aboriginal woman's perspective. And that's something that I think is so very important as Aboriginal women and Aboriginal people, but especially women, because we haven't had much of an opportunity to speak as women to other women and just say whatever's on your heart and your mind. So important for us to do on a regular basis. I like to see this become a regular event. You know, there's nothing to say you can't meet as women and do, you know, little kitchen table meetings and get more women, and it'll just grow and grow and grow. And that's how things and movements start and changes get made, by putting people like Sharon in communities like Duncan and having people come together and talk about things that are important, very, very critically important to us all as human beings, us all as human beings. Because in life, we're all together in this, and we need to help one another. When I go to do workshops and sessions with people, I have people stand and we do a prayer in a circle, and we hold one hand up and one hand down. And that's because someone's always helping us, and we're always helping someone else. And we need to remember that too, that we're part of a bigger circle, that we have people in our community, wherever we are, who are like-minded thinking. Sometimes we don't speak it, but there's speaking going on in the background. These chairs could all be filled, and they will be all filled one day. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. And we will see. You will go home, you will tell people what happened, what you heard, and when is the next happening? When is it going to happen again? So we need to keep the momentum going. I'm so thankful. I really appreciated all the stories that were told. I was thinking about our grandmother. My sister had mentioned my daughter Angeline. Her name is Angeline. She's named after our great-grandmother, Angeline, who, like Kelly's great aunt and mom, would cry each time she saw my sister and I as young ones. And, you know, that's the heartbreak of our women. Our women are feeling this pain. They're carrying it. And it's so very hard to parent when you're carrying pain like that. So very hard. I am a single mother. I've raised my kids single, together with my sister. She did help quite a bit. But the dad, my ex-husband, wasn't the man I thought he was going to be, unfortunately. So that was too bad. But my kids are beautiful, and I'm just so thankful that I was able to be there to parent, to love, to support them both, and to get them through high school. And that was a real challenging time. Real challenging, and it was challenging because of the people around my kids. Our children do not have culturally safe spaces to go to. The schools are not culturally safe. They're ridiculed, they're hurt. Even the staff, the Aboriginal staff in those schools, are not treated good. And so we have to teach our little ones and ourselves about racism and how to act and how to respond and how to speak up, because people don't know. They have no idea. They were never taught. They only know what they know. And they don't know a lot. And as Aboriginal people, we see this, we feel it every time we walk out the door. You see it, you feel it, you experience it, and you're like, what is going on here? This is not right. So we have to speak up. And you have to speak up each and every time it happens. You have to focus on what the actions were, what was said, and not so much the person's character, but what they had said. Because sometimes they don't even realize that's how they are, what the things that they say. They don't realize it. They don't know. We have to tell them. We have to teach them how to treat us, because they don't know. And it doesn't only happen in the schools, but it also happens, well, not only in the elementary school and the high schools, but also in colleges and universities. And I have a friend who's a doctor now, a very well-known doctor, and he said to me that the most racist time that he spent was at medical school. That was his most racist subject of time that he spent through medical school. And we wonder why we don't have a lot of doctors. And we wonder why we don't have as many teachers and social workers and all of that. Just getting them to the college door through high school is a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's a challenge on many levels. And one of the biggest thing that really bothers me to no end is that we have levels of poverty in this province, British Columbia, that is so astronomically high. And it's the children who are living in poverty. And many of our things, we have so many of our men and women in prison now through crimes of poverty. We need poverty reduction plan. We need to increase the level of income support that people are receiving. And we need to increase the supports to get them off of that, away from that. And it's hard to do, but it's not impossible. And it's going to take generations. It's going to take generations, but it's starting now. It's starting now. So we know that there's things that we can do. We're thinking about the, in the workplace too, that there's also racism and stereotypes and racial slurs and all of those kinds of things that happen and occur for people. And so it's difficult for people to work in mainstream positions because of some of the workplace racism that happens. We have, I work with Vancouver Coastal Health. We have a respectful workplace policy in place. And a lot of places have these policies in place, but they're not using them. Or they're not respecting the respectful workplace policy and living up to what's in there. So we need to work on that. I wanted to mention about the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation, and to say that, you know, we're not so much ready for reconciliation. I think it's going too fast. I think that the truth hasn't been told. The truth is not out. We can't have any reconciliation until the truth is out. And we have to speak the truth, and this is an opportunity to speak the truth that we have here today. One of the things in the Truth and Reconciliation that they want to do is to have all the provincial, the federal, the municipal government staff, all educated on First Nations issues, receive training on law as well, too, Indigenous law, and a lot of other things. So the Truth and Reconciliation action items are available online, but one of the things that they want to have is have all of the government, people who are working now in government agencies, to receive some training on how to work with our people and how to treat us with respect and with dignity. As my sister was talking about us non-Native people always telling Native people what to do and how to do it. It's a continuous thing that we have happened to us, that there's something called white privilege that white people have and may not know that they have a white privilege. And one of the things about white privilege is I get to tell everybody else what to do because I'm the white person here. And so you go move there and you can't speak now and whatever, whatever. So we need to manage our prejudice. Manage our prejudice. Think about, and one really good thing too to think about is if this was a white man, would you have said that to that person? That's one of the things that I always go back to. If we're being treated in a bad way, and I teach my daughter this too, and she knows this, if you were, would they have said that to you if you were a white man? Because white men have the most privilege. And then white women, and then men of color, and then women of color. And that's just how it goes in Canada. But if we were in, say, another country, somewhere else, it might look a lot different. In Bolivia, where some of the laws are there to protect Mother Earth, where they have an indigenous government. Other places as well, too. So it looks a little bit different. But you won't notice that unless you go to the other countries and see how other people are treated, and see how you're treated in another country. I remember my first time in Venezuela. I went to Venezuela and I was among a bunch of brown people, and I fit in, and you know, it was great because I wasn't being centered out every time I walked into a room or something like that. So it's quite a nice feeling to be among your own people. We heard speak about being in her own village with all the people and everybody was treated the same, and it wasn't until you went outside the village where you experienced some negativity. And that happens to our people on a daily basis. And I think poverty is one of the big things that divides us. And divides us because of the systems that are put in place to keep us down here and not to help us rise. So we need to really help one another to do the right thing, give them opportunity to speak at an event like this or another event, or accompany them to when they're experiencing a bad situation happening at school. So I volunteered at the school as a parent advisory council person, and I became the chair at the high school, the chair of the PAC. And one of the things, because it really bothered me that we don't teach everyone about Aboriginal people in schools. And that was a big thing that I was making noise about. When my son reached high school age and he didn't want to go, he just decided he didn't like that place and he wasn't going to go. And I would take him there. They had an Aboriginal worker and they had an Aboriginal room. Aboriginal room. Actually, they had a program. It was called Tumanos. And So he would only go on the day when they had Tumino's. And then eventually he didn't want to go. And he was a smart kid too, right? And big, tall. And so I took him, sometimes I would take him there, but I wouldn't stay with him because I was working too, so I couldn't stay all day. I heard of stories of moms who take their kids there and stay with them the whole day, but I couldn't do that. Anyhow, he had a bit of a time, but he went into a depression and so on, but I kept him home. I didn't force him. The counselor told me to call the police. The counselor wanted me to call the police on my son. Sometimes he wasn't going to school, and I couldn't do it. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to keep him safe. He's at home. I know where he's at. He's not into trouble or anything. And eventually because I know my son. I know he's a smart guy. He's going to do the right thing, and eventually he did. He found his own school that he wanted to go to, and enrolled, and he graduated. So he just graduated this year though, because he didn't finish. He's so determined. He didn't do his P10, so he had to finish that. It was a requirement. So anyway, he finally got that out of the way this year, and so he's graduated. And my daughter graduated last year, and she got the Urban Spirit Award in Vancouver for her work. And she was the valedictorian for the Aboriginal grade 12 grads. And she said, and for the grade 7s as well too. So that was very nice. I was active on the PAC. I said I was active on the district parent advisor, because I think that's another place that we need to support our kids, is in school. And although, many people hate going to schools as parents too, because of the residential school and all the things, but we need to get our children supported in schools. They really need it. And we need to be there for them to help them get through it, because it's so hard to do. So I wanted to mention about that, and how now with the government, the provincial government cutting the schools, underfunding. That's what they're doing. They're underfunding the school system, and many of our schools are in danger. And one of the things that I was wanting to see happen in Vancouver, at least, was to have an Aboriginal high school that was a school of excellence, that we could teach our kids what they needed to know, that we could ensure that they're going to school and that they're getting a good, great, excellent education, that they know all the life skills that they're going to need to know in order to be successful, soaring eagles in the sky. All of our kids deserve that. There's not one child who should not go on and to become a soaring eagle, living their dream. It's a crime and it's a shame. And it's policies that this government put in place. The Canadian government, the Indian Act, the residential schools, the reservations, all of those policies were put in place long ago. And our people have survived and have adapted to it in their way. And what we're seeing a lot is the self-medicating. People are self-medicating, some at alarming rates, but we have a lot of grief and a lot of grieving, a lot of loss, a lot of cultural losses that we've sustained, that we've endured. A lot of cultural losses and a lot of relationship losses, like brothers and sisters being separated and not being able to grow up as brothers and sisters. Not even sisters of different ages not knowing their sister, being separated. It's such a, as First Nations people, we know this, but non-First Nations people, thank God you didn't have to go through that. Because I do not wish that on anyone, any race. But it was something that our people endured and have survived through and are thriving. We have a lot of positive stories of a lot of positive things that are happening with our people in many different places. And I agree with the one woman this morning who was talking about that we need more supports for our men as well, too. That we don't have enough programs for our men. And our men need a lot of help because their role was taken from them through all this. One of the sessions I like to do is called Traditional Family Life Cycle, and talk about the traditionally how things were for most Aboriginal people and communities. Although there's many differences that we have, there's a lot of similarities that we have right across North and South America with Indigenous people. And some of them are the respect and the love, the honor that we have for one another, and the family ties that we have for one another, our clans. Is there any other Wolf Clan people here? My clan. It's neat though. If there's more people, there would be more Wolf Clan people. And you connect that way from other nations, because most nations will have a Wolf Clan to it. So you can connect to them that way. So with the traditional family life cycle, what I want to say about that is that no one was more important than anyone. Like the men weren't more important than the women, the children weren't more important than the elders, the youth. Everyone was just as important as everyone. Everyone had roles and responsibilities and protocols to uphold. And everybody knew that they had people following in their footsteps behind them that was watching them to be a role model for them. So they conducted themselves in good ways, and they passed their tradition and the language off. The elders and the youth spent most of their time together, so they learned the language from the elders. So it was really quite a phenomenal system that we had in place before we were rudely interrupted. And then that interruption, they took the children out of that. And I think about how, you know, our grandma, Angeline, was so upset, and Auntie was so upset, and, you know, all the women were so upset and heartbroken because the children were all taken away. And I can't imagine what that would be like in your community, in your hometown, if all the children were taken and there were no children in the city of Duncan whatsoever, none, or no children in the city of Victoria. Can you imagine? They're all put in some place what that would be like for the rest of the community? How the men would suffer, the women, the grandparents, even the older siblings. So it's really important that we look at that, and we look at the whole family, the women, the men, the children, the youth, because we all need healing. We all need healing, and we all need to work together in order to make some changes. Some things happening, some differences. I wanted to say that the cultural competency, there's a lot of health authorities are looking at cultural competency training, and it's training that people will take in hospital settings or who work in healthcare, policy making, all of those kinds of things too. But they're saying that they're looking now at cultural humility and not changing the words, because cultural competency would sometimes implies that you have to know everything about everyone's culture, because we have so many different cultures, and there's no way we can know everything about everyone's culture. But if we can be more aware of our prejudices, again, because we all have them, if we can look at our own prejudice that we have, whether it be to another race or a different group of people, we have to be aware of what those are, of ourselves, what our own prejudices are, and what our own beliefs are. And make sure that we, when we're doing our job, when we're doing our work, that we don't spill those out onto other people. Yes. So I want to say that, and what else? You know, I made some notes. Did I have them there? No, I don't have them there. I just want to make sure that I didn't forget anything that I wanted to say. Because, yeah. Yes, after all my hard work. Oh, yes. So there's the Ontario Cancer Care Agency has cultural competency courses online, Aboriginal relationship and cultural competency courses online, and they're free. And there's 9 of them. And everyone should take them. They're free. It's good. So they have one on colonization and the determinants of health. They have one on Aboriginal history and political governance. And the need for cultural competency in healthcare. So that's really, really important. And the other thing I wanted to mention, yes, about developing a women's council. I'm thinking about having a local chapter here. I know that in Vancouver's Coastal Health, Aboriginal Health Department, they're putting together an Aboriginal Women's Advisory Committee, because many of our health, and my sister's on that committee, because many of our health issues as Aboriginal women aren't always dealt with, and we need to make sure that they're a priority. And oh yeah, I was thinking about one of our friends back home, who's a grandma. She's one of our aunts, great aunts, Fran, and Fran was talking about residential school. She grew up in Ontario, and she didn't get to go to residential school, and she was one that she said she wished she was able to go because all the kids were gone, and she was back in her community, no one to play with, and yeah. So I never heard that story before, so I wanted to share that because we always hear about the kids who were at residential school and the terrible time they had there. And then here's Fran at home by herself wanting to go to residential school because there was no kids there. And another thing Fran said, and somebody had mentioned today about the teachers that were sent, that they were not well, and to teach. And that's what Fran had said to us too in the schoolhouse. She said she would go to the schoolhouse and the teacher would be sitting there crying at the schoolhouse. Yeah. So she would show up and the teacher was sobbing. And so I just think about how those people, they have their stories too, right? And those teachers and all those people, what they were doing there. And some may not have been wanting to be there, against their will. So just thinking about that, how that affects them. And I wanted to mention too about a program in Vancouver that's called Warriors Against Violence, that has men, it started with a husband and wife team who wanted to do something about violence in their home. And so they started a support group, and they have a group for men and a group for women that meets, and then they have a co-ed group where they can come together. And, yeah, and it's been working quite well for many years, and I think that that's another good suggestion that could be duplicated in other cities. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening and for inviting us all, Sharon, to come and share with you, and really raise my hands up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one last speaker.
I just moved home 4 or 5 years ago. I grew up all across Canada. I understand the judicial system, sovereignty of our lands, and where my people come from. We come from the Longhouse. Born into it. I'm a young chief and I was named last year. I'm just learning our cultural protocols, and I speak to my elders. I don't drink or touch drugs. I try to tell my cousins and uncles and aunties that drinking is not good because they're fighting or this or that, and that to walk the path. And what I want to see is different changes on our reserves, which is what's going on is what I see and what I understand from what the elders tell me is that they were given millions of dollars in 2004 for the mold crisis. They called it the mold crisis of the home projects here in Cowichan on all the reserves. And when I came home, I started speaking to my elders, going into their houses. I could smell the mold. They said they fixed the houses or they renovated most of the houses on the reserves. And I've walked into many houses, and I asked my elders, what did they do? How did they do the renovations? I've done everything in trades, concrete, building house kits, so I understand the structure of what they said they did and what they promised to the people and my elders. And lots of the elders on the reserves are dying because of the mold, the black mold that's growing in the houses as we speak, and they're dying because it's health hazards. If it was like that in the white world where I grew up in, they wouldn't let people be living in these moldy houses because of the black mold. You breathe it in and it attacks your lungs, makes you sick, you get cancer, leukemia, and the list goes on. What bothers me is Tribe said that they've renovated all the houses and they're supposed to make a certain quota of houses, which they didn't even come close to. They were given $78.5 million to fix the whole reserve, build more houses, and put people off the reserve onto the reserve. And they basically lied. I listened to my elders, I understand what they're saying. That's just one of the problems we have on our reserve that's not fixed. We have lots of kids living in these houses, we got elders, the whole community. The protocols have changed through the decades. My great-grandparents, my grandparents and stuff. It's like they're making up their own protocols along the way after certain elders have died. Certain families have stood up and changed our protocols in the Longhouse. What I don't like seeing is what's going on the reserves right now is not good for my people or the kids or the elders. Some of the elders are scared to live on the reserve with all the violence going on, all the rapes, all the murders, the suicides. It's unreal that Cowichan Tribes says one thing but they do the opposite. I just wanted to confirm coming here today was just see if anyone from Cowichan Tribes would be sitting here. And I'm related to everyone from one degree or another. None of the council are here. Chief's not here. Band manager. List goes on. It confirmed to me that they're hiding a lot, and I see it and I understand it. This is why my mother's having this forum, because we've went to the AGMs through the years since we've been home. Every time we tried to get up and speak, somebody from Cowichan Tribes would run up and take the microphone away. Because the truth, they don't want to hear the truth. They'd rather sweep it under the rug and leave it alone, because things they're doing is wrong. See, like, back in the day when my mom was growing up, as a child, she went to residential school. I've heard the horrific stories, what the priests and the nuns done. I listened to other elders speak. I can feel their pain. I'm fortunate to be living in a different time. Times have changed. But what my mother went through, or parents and the grandparents went through, were unreal. I'm Cowichan, I'm discriminated against. I come from a long line of chieftains. They won't let me live on the reserve, even though my family owns all the reserves here on Cowichan. They let these people live on our reserves that murder and rape, and drink and party. Yet I don't drink or do drugs, you know, and I should be able to be living on my own homeland. There's lots of issues that are hidden from white society. Cowichan Tribes is quiet about it. People in the white world don't hear it because they keep it quiet. What's going on the reserves. It bothers me immensely because the elders say one thing, but they do the opposite. It's like, I don't know, they're scared too, so I understand what they're going through. We got people that live on our reserve that come from other reserves or from America or up and down the island. Got them living here on our reserves. I've talked to councilmen and councilwomen. I've asked them, well, how come you don't go on to any of the houses on the reserve? Speak to the people so that we can bring the suicides down. And they're like, no, we've never done that. You know, and our council, they get paid $2,000 a month, and they only go to a meeting once a week, but they don't really attack the real issues. Meeting once a month, and they get paid $2,000 a month. Yet, we're the ones that put these people in office, and yet it's almost the same councilman, councilwoman going in every other year. The issues aren't being dealt with politically or even on the reserve at a high level. A couple years ago, they said they have security guards controlling up and down Boys Road, saying that they're trying to keep the violence down, the drinking and stuff, but I don't see none of them around on the reserve. You know, something's going on the reserve. They're not there. It's like all for show, for whatever reasons. I know I'm gonna get lots of flack for speaking out, saying this, but you know, I have a right to, because I come from a high family, but I'm discriminated against because I've never lived here. But I grew up, I was born on the reserve. I understand the family dynamics, the protocols, and the protocols, the old ways aren't what they used to be. They've changed it. We got people living on our land that are foreign, that are from different reserves, from different countries, living on our land, saying that they own it. But it's not them that own. We've had our Indian names taken away from us, stolen. Other families trying to be us, who our family is. There's lots I got to say. It just bothers me. My first time speaking politically. It's just the women run everything, protocols in the longhouse, but the men control it now, which is wrong because they flipped it over. should be the women. They're taking all the kids out of the houses on the reserve and they're putting them into foster care in the white world here. I don't agree with what's going on our reserves, and I don't accept it. I look up to some of the elders, and the rest just, it's just, I know that I've been home for 4 or 5 years now, and I've been speaking to many family members, asking about the research and the land, and I've stretched back to the 1700s, old Cowichan. I understand the whole lineage, chieftains going all the way back, since the Hawaiians first landed in Cowichan. I come from both lines, from the royal side, from Hawaii, and chieftains here in Cowichan. Our families from Cowichan, the heads of each family should be sitting on lands. Not all these foreign native people coming from up the island, down the island, the states. People that aren't even native are sitting on land, that are controlling our land, all our resources. And they're trying to say they're us. I don't know, it's unreal. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Richard. I'll maybe explain what Rick was saying. I've come home almost 5 years ago. I grew up in Cowichan. I didn't grow up in a house. I grew up in Kamtumlet's big house. I was the baby that grew up in there. I was breastfed by the women of the Longhouse. That's my culture. That's Halkamatum culture. That's Salish culture. They pick one child that's born within our culture, and that child is raised with these teachings. They're hard teachings. They're not hug you, kiss you teachings. I was breastfed by 5 women of the Longhouse. I learned how to walk in my time. I was trained to talk in Halkamatum. I watched everybody. I listened to everything. And I held on to my grandmother's skirt. That was Helen. And I slept behind the dancers on a handmade cedar cot. And I walked the floors. The floors were so soft. It's like walking on angel dust. I did my spiritual walk around that place. I was spiritual. I was the baby that kept that place good. My heart was good. My head was good. They don't do that anymore. When I left there, I went home. It was like I went through this ritual to be brought in the house. I didn't just go into the house, my grandmother's house. I slept outside to work my way into a household again after living in the Longhouse for years. It was strange for me to put a nightgown on. I remember my Indian naming, I'm Sahalam. I was given that name when I was 3 years old with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Hundreds from all over Coast Salish territory came to my naming. I wore a red shawl. And I sat there quietly. I trained up to that point. Everything about my living existence was training for that name because that's who I am, Sahilem. We don't get that name when we're 30 or 40 years old like they're doing today. That's an insult to that name. You grow up and you have a name, you're trained to walk through that name, and along with that name comes teachings. Those teachings are hard. I had to listen to every single bird singing. I had to be quiet, listen to everybody talking in the room. I watched what they ate, how they talked. Every single song I carry in my heart. The languages that they said, I carried it in my heart. And then I went to residential school. How backwards. Just a total flip side of my culture. There I got beat up. I was sexually abused. I was hit with a ruler on my head. I was told I was dumb, stupid, ugly. And then when I was about 12 years old, I ran away. It's Cooper Island. And I sat in that dollhouse, looking at where my father worked, across from the bay and the boom grounds. And I went, I'm running away from this place. I'm running, and I'm going to get away. And I planned it, executed it. I was gone. I was one of the few children who escaped Cooper Island and got away and never went back. But that had some kind of impression on my life that would carry me all through my life. And I listened to everyone here today talk about education. I never went back to school after that. I was too scared to. Everything about education was racist, it was violent, it was discriminatory. Even the teachings were foreign. I went back to school because my father told me, honey, when you go, he didn't want me to grow up here. He didn't want my kids to grow up here. I had to take them far away from here because of the high suicides, the crisis of suicides that we experienced in Cowichan, we're still experiencing in Cowichan. How many millions were paid for reconciliation, for a residential school? Nothing has come this way. We are the largest band, the largest nation in Canada, and there's fierce poverty here. We can't even build all the longhouses. For each reserve, we only have 3. We should have 12. There's no cultural understanding about who we are. We need the funding to build a longhouse for each reserve that we have here, because each reserve holds a huge name: Quamachin, Samana, Kamkamlets, Kapalis. All of them should have a big house. When I left, I was told by my father, you raise your kids far away from here. Don't bring them back till my grandson is a man and he can handle it. Why? It hurt me really bad. I thought, I was never breastfed by my mom. She didn't teach me how to talk or walk. You can't tell me. I'm not leaving here fast enough. My bags are packed. I'm leaving and I'm taking my kids far away from here. but he told me, come back when my son's a man. I thought, you know, when I left here, I was never coming back here. Coming back to what? Paradise or poverty? A retired white man's paradise and a native poverty. That's forced poverty. Reserves. Native people live in forced poverty under the Indian Act. Now let's look at how much money was spent on reconciliation. Billions. They extracted $47 trillion of gold out of Cowichan in the 1800s, going into the 1900s, without agreements. Why? We're self-government. There is no treaty here. They stole it. When is that going to be paid back, Canada? We made Canada rich. We made the churches rich in this country. But there is no thanks. It's turned upside down about who's right and who's wrong. What does reconciliation mean to me as a Cowichan woman that grew up in Tumtumlets? What does it mean to me as a leader that grew up as a baby in a longhouse here? I have to speak the truth, and believe me, I didn't want to be here. It took me a long time to come back home. When I was in Alberta, I went back to school. I didn't want to go to school. I went back to get my grade 12. I was sitting in my boyfriend's truck crying because I didn't want to get out of the truck to go into that college to get my grade 12 because it was so racist. Education is so racist. The experience is awful. And I walked through it. I walked through a lot of racism in college. A guy got up and screaming mad, why do we have to pay for these Indians? And I got up and I answered him. I said, you didn't pay for my education. I paid for myself. I paid for myself to get a grade 12. And then I took business school. Then I took business computers. And I was working. I even became a model. Not that I ever envisioned myself. It was never a dream. Native women don't dream. When you're a child, you don't have a dream. I never ever dreamed to be a model. Me? I was called dumb, ugly, stupid growing up. I believed that. And I became a L'Oreal hair model. I walked into the biggest shows, down the biggest catwalks with thousands of people taking pictures of me. I had to learn how to walk in high heels before my first show. And I had some of the most beautiful women around me. And it was a wonderful experience. It kind of made me feel like I was a woman, that I wasn't dumb, stupid, dirty, savagery. It made me feel like I belonged somewhere. For a short period of time, even though it was artificial, it was a good experience. We have a lot of beautiful Native women in Canada that have low self-esteem. I would like to see the level of esteem raised across the nation for our women. Women are the strength of the family in our culture. Women are the strength of our communities, and the women are the strength of our nation. Women are sacred because we're life givers. We give life. Everything about our culture, it's different from the white man's culture. I didn't want to use the word white today, but I am. Justice. You know? What kind of word is that? You know, I work in justice. I questioned that a lot. Eventually, I went and took Aboriginal justice and criminology with a second degree in sociology. And I specialized in Aboriginal research. And I was the first Native woman to walk into a federal prison and work. The first Native woman. You can imagine that experience. I was treated with so much racism by the staff. I was their token Indian working in federal corrections. And I had a whole career of it. And then I worked in a community justice program for Native youth first-time offenders. That was one of the most successful programs that I ever seen. You get them young, and you can work with them, and it's all cultural teachings, the cultural aspects of coping with racism. Let's just say racism. And I went through one of the most traumatizing things that Aboriginal women experience is when their kids get hurt. And then the justice system fails you. My son was kidnapped, 2005. 8 white men kidnapped my son by shotgun, held him for ransom for $25,000. I didn't have it, so you can imagine racing through my mind, my son's gonna die tonight because I don't have 25 grand. I called my daughter because I was in shock. I asked her, do you have 25,000? She said, Mom, hang up the phone, call 911. Just do it right now. She had to demand me so I could focus. Slammed the phone down, I called 911. Hours went by, hours. I knew my son was being tortured because I didn't have the money to. And it took a long time to try and make sense of what happened because it's so traumatic. You know, I didn't care about my life anymore. I cared about my children. I seen them go through racism in school. You know, that's painful for a parent to watch. And then when you have one of your children kidnapped, and Saskatoon wasn't ready for a kidnapping. They didn't even know what to do. But the rookie that they left with me saved my son's life. And when it went to court, the justice system is very racist. They had a good lawyer. All of them did it. Just doom, 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 doom. Came down to one man. Plea bargained himself right out. He got 2 years and he walked in 1. You know how enraging that is? That was a kidnapping. You compare it to all the other kidnappings in Canada, 25 years, 10 years, 14, 2 years for a Native person to be kidnapped. That's how devalued we are as a people across this nation. It's you're Indian. You don't matter. You're a woman. You matter even less. And I'm Sahalem. That's my grandfather buried up there on Mount Sahalem. Tourists go up there, churchgoers. Everybody goes up to Mount Sahalem and they dig around and they're looking for something and they go on little field trips. That's a burial ground up there. There's even a subdivision making their way up that mountain. And it hurts me. It doesn't belong to the white subdivision. That's my grandfather's fort up there and his graveyard. Those caves, he knew that mountain inside out. That's his. He had a longhouse right at the bottom of that mountain. There's no respect. No respect given to our culture. We're not a craft art show. We're not a Aboriginal Day. We have a living culture with a living people, and women are sacred. I want women to be acknowledged for reconciliation. I'm asking for action from the Prime Minister of Canada. Action for Aboriginal women in Cowichan, the biggest reserve in Canada. I've seen too many suicides, thousands in Cowichan. We may as well be Juarez, Mexico. That's what it's like outside of there. You go into, it's like, you can compare it to Juarez. No, it's okay if you go missing, you know, who cares? It's a crisis situation with suicides and rape. Lots of people get murdered. Everybody, I don't know. Who knows? That's got to come to an end. In our culture, our laws, if men rape, they're banished. Everything's stripped from them and given to the victim or the family. People who kill, banished. Everything's stripped from them, given to the victim or the victim's family. That is cultural law. They're slapping these people on the hand. Go ahead, go one winter in the longhouse and go back to the community and scare everybody. Fear.
Our laws are handed down to us, it's not written on paper.
It's not written on paper. I believe I am the last baby born into the longhouse, and I guess that's why I'm called home, because I remember everything. I mean, I was a little wild when I was growing up, but you would be too if you grew up really cultural and then were expected to act white after. I was pretty wild growing up. I had no rules, no boundaries, but then I'm Sahalem too. Sahalem knows no boundaries. Sahalem loves his people. Everything you hear about him is just made up. Anyway, that's what I ask for, reconciliation and justice for Aboriginal women of Coast Salish territory. We're Longhouse people. We have laws. I would like to see an institute of technology for Aboriginal people here, right here in Cowichan, to build up our information, to build up our technology, our wisdom, our culture. We had 12 languages here in 1900. Now we have one. That's genocide. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. That's all I have to say.